Next speaker this morning is Shari Falkenburg. She's currently the CNA Insurance Risk Control Assistant Vice President. Shari has over 30 years of experience in the insurance industry and has worked for EORM, Environmental Operational Risk Management, URS Corporation, based in Rolling Meadows, Illinois, which is actually where I lived for a period of time in my life. Rolling Meadows, so I have a connection. Also for the Aon Corporation and Kemper Insurance. Her areas of expertise include commercial PAC, environmental, health and safety, ergonomics, ISO 14001, OHSAS 18000, and Six Sigma Lean Manufacturing. Ms. Falkenburg received a Bachelor of Science degree in Occupational Therapy from Mount Mary College in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, which ironically is where my wife and I make honey. Talk about a big spender. And has her master's degree in business management from Cardinal Stritch College, also in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Shari holds the following professional designations: ULRRE, which is a recognized risk engineer. She's board certified as an occupational therapist. She's also board certified as an ergonomist. She's a lead auditor. She's Green Belt Six Sigma, and also a National Floor Safety Institute walkway auditor. She's a member of the she's been with CNA Insurance for a number of years and has compiled quite an impressive research project, which she's going to speak to today. And I say impressive, CNA Insurance has been on the National Floor Safety Institute's board of directors from day one. They founded, or co-founded, the NFSI and have been a very active supporter of our efforts. Much of the research, much of the information that we've received over the last 16, 17 years has been in great part attributed to CNA Insurance. When people ask, well, where does this data come from? How does the National Floor Safety Institute, promote all this information? Who said? Well, who said are companies like CNA Insurance, which is just one of the many companies that provide us data as to slip and fall prevention, just slip and fall statistics. With that, I'd like to ask that you welcome Shari Falkenburg from CNA Insurance.
So coming from Chicago and hitting the pollen in the last hour has been interesting. So if I have my water, if I take a swig, don't worry, I'm not going to fade out. It's just my body's getting used to the pollen in the air in the last 24 hours. Slip, trip, and fall is an interesting topic for me. Coming out of therapy, actually I've done biomechanics. I've written a book on biomechanics and physics, specifically studying ambulation and gait. Was involved with some ocular things with computers years ago, being an ergonomist. Personally, I have my own feelings that I've been exploring the last 5 years at CNA. And some of the information I'm going to share with you, I'm going to stick to what we have as real, and then when I interject what I'm suspecting, I'll say Shari thinks, so that you know what I'm suspecting. But if you were to say to me today, of what you've done in the area of walkway safety, same level, I myself in the last 3 years done about 1,000 tribometry readings. We'll describe that and what it looks like. And as I look at it, I'm starting to see more in the area of, I'll call it distractions. The eyes having an impact. I am seeing more with the feet. I'm going to ask all of you, a little crazy, but you don't have to tell me your answer, but everyone look at your heels for a minute and just raise your hand if you have any kind of heel that is slanted. So it'll be slanted either to the left or slanted to the right. If you look at some of the information, at about age 40, the feet start to get inversion or eversion. Inversion, eversion. Most people get eversion. If you relate that to the biomechanics of the body, if you take that and you add some of the proprioception on the bottom of the foot and what happens, you begin to wonder, is there something about the proprioceptiveness of the foot, the design of the foot? Let me throw one other thing. I'm in my 60s, and I have glasses. I am farsighted. But I have noticed when I go on an escalator, when I go on an uneven surface. And again, my therapy background from where I came from, two of the different motor perceptual pieces you lose are figure, ground, and spatial relationships. Figure ground, the best example I have is, where is Waldo? Can somebody raise their hand if you know what I'm talking about so I don't feel too old? Thanks, guys. Where is Waldo is a figure ground piece. I couldn't find Waldo if my life depended on it. I used to find Waldo, but I don't think I could now. Going back to the escalator, that is a figure ground spatial relationship exercise. And what I find is when I am having my luggage and I travel regularly, I have to grab the railing. I need that proprioceptive. So Shari Falkenburg is looking at slip, trips, and falls and starting looking at things that relates to mat. And if you were to say to me, in the study you've done, what have you discovered? I would tell you, I need a mat where I can do 3 steps, 3 minimum. So take the average step, take your anthropometrics, you're probably looking at about a 6-foot mat for walk-off. It's that way because of the biomechanics of the body, shifting weight, the feel, the proprioceptive, the spatial relationships, the eye to the body. I think these things all play into it. Where we are at CNA is we're not at that level, although we're about in the next 30 days to take the next step and start to look at pulling together. We're looking at really talking at CNA about what are the gait patterns? What happens to feet with age? How does that impact our customer? So the journey I'm going to take you on is I'm going to talk to you about how we're measuring the slips and falls, what we've done, how we've done it through injury reduction using tribometry. I can tell you that in the studies and the information that we have at CNA, we have been using tribometry for about 10 years. And about 3 years ago was when I took on the liability, the casualty side of the house at CNA. And again, with my passion to what I shared with you, with my own personal experience, started looking at our data. 2 summers ago, we hired an intern, and that intern at home office, her job was to look at all the data, all the studies that we've done, all the readings that we've done, and started to say, can we make a difference? Now you might say, why would CNA go into this? We are a commercial insurance carrier. We are very well represented in the construction business. In fact, most people, when you hear construction, you hear of CNA. We have over 20 association programs that we insure. We insure roofers. And if you look at our numbers in roofing, we have reduced falls from heights significantly with an injury prevention program. So I began thinking, could we not do this for falls with the same surface? Could we start to look? And so what I want to share with you is I'm going to talk about our approach. I'm going to share our numbers. And then the last slide I'm going to show you is actually a description of the study I was involved with, the one that had over about 1,000 readings. I'll explain how we approached it. I'll explain kind of what the outcomes are, and then answer any questions. So when you think of commercial insurance, you have to look at it, what are we trying to achieve? At CNA, we are a multi-line carrier. So we do have slip, trips, and falls, and we're moving more towards slips and falls as a description in the workers' compensation space. But if you take a step back and look at our statistics, that's not where we have a lot of our problems. In the workers' compensation space, you can control things like footwear. You can start to look at how high is my shoe? What is the sole of the shoe? What is the heel of the shoe? What is the flooring going on? What is the contaminant they're exposed to? And I can control that. What we have found is that it's our liability space that I'm going to share with you. That is where we have a lot of losses and a lot of opportunities. And I don't think CNA Insurance is any different than any other major carrier. I think we all have these issues. So from our perspective, there's 2 goals that we try to do. Number 1 is we really want to understand what are we going to measure, how are we going to measure, and against what standard. Now I'll be honest with you, we were a lot of static coefficient of friction users. We are switching more to dynamic. But in our world, it's a coefficient of friction. That is the threshold we're looking at. So what we're saying is, on a liability case, if a liability claim came in, that means that somebody fell on our insured's property. That person who fell was not an employee. We want to be able to say, are we liable? And as part of that liability, before you get to defensibility, is you are trying to investigate what is the liability issue. And when we're looking at that liability, we have two engineering firms we use that go out and do what I'm going to call as a grab sample. They go out and they do a quick tribometry reading. Why am I telling you this? Because in the risk engineering department at CNA, our group serves the customer. Our group goes out and does a risk assessment. We look at the past losses that insured had. If that insured had 2 losses, if I can get access to that record of when that engineer came out and got a sample and got a reading, and I know that the method they did, I know the standard they used. If I use the same standard and the same method and I get a reading, I'm able to compare. So in our world, it's all about risk management tools for reducing slips and falls. It's not as focused on it has to be this standard. We change standards all the time as things grow. You know, you look at the industrial hygiene world, one of my backgrounds. I mean, I can tell you any given day, we use ANSI, we use OSHA, ACGIH, and we may switch. What we're trying to do is saying, as an insurance carrier, as a risk engineer, what do I have that are losses? What is the beginning picture? How were they investigated? Now I'm going to go out and do a risk assessment. Now I'm going to go out and I'm going to start to determine what is the walkway surface? What is the reading? What is the equipment telling me? So we're really using that to control slips, trips, and falls, or in this case, slips and falls. And we're doing it for prevention. So the research that's done, some of the work that's done as NFSI or other organizations, that to us isn't really our goal. Our goal is what are they doing? What can we use? How can we compare to prevent these? So tribometry for us, whether we measure the SCOF or the DOF, it doesn't matter. We are going to dynamic because we do believe that we're more concerned about motion. I'm suspecting that these other attributes of the foot and the feet and the walkway and the mechanics are playing into it. So we are moving toward a dynamic coefficient of friction. But we are using that to really determine at that point of time what's going on with that floor. How can we have a discussion with our customer? How can we relate it to their losses? Can we relate it to their losses? And then going forward, how are we going to prevent it? So I like to use the traction scale as I'm not as interested, not that I'm not interested, but I'm not as interested in the 0.4 or 0.34 or 0.38. I'm more interested in is it a green light or a red light? So whatever threshold, whatever standard I'm using, if that's the scientific point, then is my customer's floor walkway surfaces same level? Are they within that range? Are they well below or well above? Can I take those numbers, and when I have a customer that has the same footprint, a retail, a hotel, a hospital, when I repeat those numbers over and over again over time, over different facilities with the same footprint, can I start to draw what we call predictive analytics? And you're going to see the answer is yes. The study that I was involved in, I can pretty much tell you because the footprint is the same, thousands of stores, same cleaning products, method may change, but products are the same. Pretty much can tell you by knowing 1 or 2 attributes of their cleaning methods, I can pretty much guess where they're going to come on a tribometry. And I'm accurate. I can pretty much tell you that based on some of the things that they're using, maybe the syrups, or maybe the amount of rain. In fact, in the study that we did, we had a lot of outside falls and inside falls. And actually, the outside falls didn't concern me at all after I did 1,000 readings. It was the inside falls. And what it wasn't the ice and snow, not at all. It was the rain. In this particular type of environment, we had more problems with the rain. I have more problems in Tennessee than I do in Michigan. So you start to look at data and you start to say, can I collect enough data? Can I start to do some predictive analytics? And that's what CNA is all about. I would say in the last 5 years, if I'm ever proud of CNA and the risk engineers that serve the field, and by the way, that's not me, I'm home office. I get the pleasure of working with them. But they're the ones that go out and look at the people and the footprint. I call it footprint, that's a Shari word. How does that environment set up? What does it look like? How are they cleaning it? And then what can we gather for information so going forward we can direct other customers? So for us in this slide, it's really about, do they have a green light or a red light? Are they somewhere in the yellow? And I'll show you our numbers later because actually we have a fair amount of customers that are in the green, which is very good. And I will tell you that we don't have as many in the red. And if you said to me, what's your real trouble spot? I would tell you it's the yellow. And I'll show you why. And there's a business side to that of why the yellow is going to be our sweet spot for trying to impair or improve rather. So here's a slide. This gives you, again, CNAs and all types of things, but we have about 6, 7 major industries that we really do work in. So in those industries, the top 5 where we have claims, now we're talking liability claims, so not an employee has slipped, fallen, but a customer, a tenant has done that. We have 5 industries that we've seen claims. We have seen them in eating, drinking, real estate, apparel stores, food stores, and hotels. And if I looked in the last 3 years, because it's been the last 3 years that we've taken a very strong look as what is the relationship of our claims in these industries to the results of using our tribometry. The people in the field have primarily, we've used tribometry for restaurants, real estate, and retail. Now, here's what's interesting. In the restaurants and the retail, most of the time, as I would say, the footprints are very similar. So you tell me you have a certain type of a business, you tell me the floor type, I pretty much know what the coming in, what the floor type, what the reading, what the cough should be. I can then start asking you about cleaning solutions. I can basically look about alkaline or acidity base, and I can pretty much get an idea of, are we going to have a problem or are we not going to have a problem? That's the direction we want to go. But if you said to me, well then Shari, where it's the top industries for CNA risk control, risk engineers, risk control, where we're using tribometry, what's the area that concerns you? And the area that keeps me up at night is real estate. Real estate offers a whole different array when it comes to slips and falls, types of floors, types of clientele. It changes. Who's liable? Is there a premise liability law? Where is it located? That changes the landscape significantly. I don't have a steady flow. One of the fascinating things I found in the restaurants was when you look at the claims and dig down, I'm not saying it's common, but I'm not saying it's uncommon that you go into some of the owner-operators and they say, oh yeah, Mr. Smith, oh yeah, he was the claim we had 4 years ago. He's right over there having coffee. And I'm thinking, okay, we paid for the claim and the person came back and oh yeah, they're a patron, Shari. That's very common. I saw that a lot and it would surprise me, but I thought, well, it makes sense. If I got my coffee at a certain location every morning, I would continue, right? That's my socialization. That's where I go. It's close to home. It fits my schedule. Why wouldn't I go back? So it's very fascinating. But the most important thing on this slide is that we're really going to look to focus on the restaurants, real estate, and retail. The study I'm going to talk to you is the retail restaurant business, but where we want to go is more real estate. So now I'm going to start to share with you using the tribometer. We've been using the BOT, the binary output tribometer. We've been doing it now for about 10 years. We have found that it's very reliable, it's very repeatable, it's easy to use, it has a nice histogram, so if you're out in the field and you say, I think this was this working, you have a piece of paper that you can show someone and say, here was my pattern, here's what I saw, yes, it was working, and we're able to start really building some information with that. But here's what I think is really fascinating. So we had in the last 3 years, because remember the last 3 years is really where I only looked at those claims and those accounts, we have 362 accounts that fit that arena of restaurant, retail, and real estate. We have more, but these would be in the liability space that we touched that had slip, trips, and falls. So if we had 1,000 real estate, there's only a small portion here that we've had these experiences or these losses. Of that, of those 362 accounts, 112 had tribometry service over a 3-year period. Now that means that the risk control professional went into the environment, took some readings, documented them, had discussions with the customer, and provided some type of input service. It may have been a discussion, it may have been a cleaning, a changing of your maintenance, your cleaning. It might have been putting a mat down. It may have been educating people on clean surface, a variety of things it could have been. But what you see here is that in this group of 362 accounts, 112 that had tribometry, we had about 34% that had a very high coefficient of friction. And we had about 18% that had a very low, and we had 48% that was moderate. So one might say, well, you know, a lot of your customers are doing good because 34%, have good surfaces. Well, we like to look at it as that was the snapshot in time. So what we're trying to do going forward is we're trying to really look at what does the customer have as far as the type of flooring, the products they're using. Are you going to be doing mats? What's changing with your clientele? What's changing with your operation? So that's where we have to go to get a better handle on that, because just because they're high today doesn't mean they're going to be high tomorrow. But there you see then we have about 48%, and if you add that to the 18%, we have a fair amount of opportunity here within these 362 accounts to improve them and prevent future occurrence of them. So everybody likes to see percent, everybody likes to see claims in dollars. These are the dollars. You have to keep in mind that we're a multi-billion-dollar operation, so sometimes when people see these numbers, they gasp and say, 100,000, a million, what do you have? Really, it's a very small number. But keep in mind, I'm only showing you 3 years worth. If I were to go back and show you multiple years, slip, trip, and fall is definitely in the top 3 loss drivers for liability for CNA. And I don't think that's different for anybody else. But these are the numbers. This is probably the opportunity slide. And if I were to say to you in my whole presentation, where does it come together? Where does the rubber meet the road? This is the slide I would have you look at. I'm going to take a little time to explain this slide because this is where we started to take our claims data, our tribometry data, and we put it together and said, could we start to do some predictive analytics? Could we start to show loss savings, and what would it mean to our customers, and what would it mean to CNA? So what we did was we took the dollars from the previous slides, covering that 3-year period, and we took those type of slip, trips, and falls and aggregated in some of the claims information. And we came up with then, what would it take? What would we have to gain in percentage of increase to show a savings? And what happened is in the low range, we said that in order to improve our numbers, to have our customers have better walkway surfaces, we would need to increase their current surface and the way they're doing their business by 10 to 25%. Now, 25% is a big number, and if you know anything about statistics, most of the times a good statistician is going to tell you 3% gain, 5% gain, 10% gain, that's great. But in this situation, we were looking anywhere between 10 and 25%. That's a really high number. And so it was a matter of, I'm not sure we can get there. However, I look at that moderate range and I'm thinking, how hard would it take someone to get from a 0.38 to a 0.40? Probably could get there. Probably could get there repeated times. And in this case, if we were to do that, you see the savings to the right. So now we started to say, could we use tribometry as a threshold to say, we're going to go take our measurements We're going to then do some intervention, mats, cleaning solutions, cleaning methods, operations, who's coming in your door, all of a bunch of procedures we could do. And could we improve them so that we could take the coefficient of friction and we could take on the low end to go from 0.5 to a 0.125, and that we would expect to see a 10 to 15% reduction in claims costs. This slide is geared towards CNA business, but the outcome of this is that the customer is experiencing less slips and falls. Could we then, and that savings, as you could see, would be greater than $1 million. Could we also do the same thing for those moderate? We would achieve having them taking them from a 0.25 to a 0.075, which is probably realistic, and we would reduce the claims by 5 to 15% or have a savings of $1 million. Both of them gave us the same output. Therefore, from a business move, it was easier to move our moderate. We have more people in that area that have more claims in that level of slip, trip, and fall. And could we continue to use tribometry? We believe that there is a correlation between the amount of claims and your coefficient of friction. We are starting to see situations that if you have these amount of claims, you probably have some coefficient of friction that is related or correlated. So 3 years ago, we decided to package it up and to go into one environment and see if we could make a difference. I was the one that took the charge on that, and so I'm going to share that with you right now. We applied our thinking to say, let's look at this entire type of industry, this one particular account. It was a retail, it was a franchisee. We insure the franchisees as an insurance carrier and risk control. They have to work with you. That's part of the insurance deal, so they have to let you in. But nobody was resistant. People were very acceptable. In fact, I have to tell you, most of the time when you bring in your tribometer, ours was the bot, most of the responses I got was, what is that thing crawling across the floor? Is it going to come get me? Is it going to deliver my food? They thought it was a drone. A couple of people thought that gold was buried under the floor. Most of the people were really amused by it, to be honest with you. But what we wanted to do is to say, all right, if we know this environment, then let's take a look at the footprint. Now, in our world, you'd look at claims, you have to look at severity or frequency. In the liability space, we have severity, don't get me wrong, but if I want to do a study where I'm looking at the impact of claims and tribometry, then I have to go after frequency because I have more of it. I can get it easier. I don't have these the one severe case that really penalized or affected the whole account that we did. So we went after frequency. Frequency in the insurance world means the number of claims. So I'm using claims as my basis. I'm going to use claims here as my basis. But what we found was we had to do what's called a modified frequency. If you were a franchisee owner and you had 25 stores with us and you had been with us 8 years, should you be penalized because you've been with us a long time, therefore we have a lot of history on you, a lot of claims, a lot of data, versus somebody who has only 2 franchisee stores and has been with us 1 year? So I call it a modified frequency because with our actuaries is the person in your insurance company that does all the predictive model, gives you all the numbers, all the outputs, where to go, how you're doing. We teamed up with our actuary and said, can you take all of our claims in this retail business? They have the same footprint. They look alike, the doorways are alike, the entrances, the deliveries, everything is the same, relatively. Can we look at frequency and can we modify it so someone is not penalized because they have 23 stores versus 2 stores? Can we modify it so that we can normalize that you had 3 claims one bad year versus no claims the next 2 years? And so what we did was we normalized the data and we were able to say, here are all the owner-operators, and at that time, we had about 300 owner-operators. We had thousands and thousands of retail stores. I was never going to see all the stores. I could bring the whole 200 risk control people with me, and we were never going to be able to look at all those stores. But what can we give the customer for slip and fall prevention? So what we did was we took the data, and we could take every customer, every store, and we could look at the owner-operator, and I had a spreadsheet that said, Here's your modified score based on your frequency over the number of years you've been with us, over the number of stores you have with us. And in that normalization, the numbers in the team that I had, there were 3 of us, 2 of what the agent we worked with, and 1 was a risk control within CNA. We all knew that we had to go after the stores that had a certain threshold that were in the red zone. And the red zone, the number 0.4 and 0.8 were the 2 affectionate numbers that we fell in love with. Those are not good numbers, by the way. 0.4 told me that you were a franchisee owner, that you typically had, for every store you had 1.8 falls a year. Now I know you can't have a 0.8 fall, so you had about 2 falls a year. And I knew that if you had a 0.8 modified frequency, that's not a tribometry number, that you had about the same or 1. So it was 1 to 2 falls a year. So then we said to us, well, if you're an owner of 23 stores, we're not going to go after all 23 stores. So can we take these numbers, the 0.4, the 0.8, we know that this is a modified frequency, can we apply tribometry to those? And can we use that as a threshold to have a discussion with the customer to say, your problem is in the entranceway. What do you think about a mat? Your problem is the cleaning solution you're using. Your problem is the dirty water. Your problem is the application you have is more alkaline and it should be more acidity based. Can we look at that? And it came back and it started to tell a story. The answer was yes. And we started to say, can we take this predictive number and start relating it to claims, and will the claims go down? And the answer is yes. In this retail, in these thousands of stores, I have customers in Michigan, in Texas, in Philadelphia, in New Mexico, with 20 stores, have not had slip and fall in probably 20 years. You say, well, why is that? One of the attributes, here's a Shariism, that I feel is I found that the span of control with the retail stores was about 5. So if you had a manager over 5 stores, we probably saw some good results. If you had a manager that was over 12 stores, I probably had problems. Can't prove it through the numbers, but could definitely see it through the claims. Could definitely plot it out and see the situation. So now we were able to say, okay, I now know that if I look at all my customers, I look at the ones that are 0.8 or higher, I must see them first. We must have intervention with them. Something's not working. We're going to use tribometry to determine a threshold. It's a talking point of, this is what the research is showing. You need to get under this number. Let's talk about some ways to do it. If we don't get it right the first time, we'll improve. We'll take another reading. How confident was I with the tribometry? Very confident. In this particular clientele base, we would go in and we would do 4 spots per retail store. We would do 3 axes per spot. We would walk out with 12. We had a range that the actuarials gave us. If we were outside that range with the tribometry, we would go back in and retest. So we walked off with a pretty good footprint saying, we're going to be able to help you. We're going to be able to help figure this one out for you. We then went from, the first year, we went from the ones that were 0.8 and higher, modified frequency, and worked with them. We then went down to the 0.4 and worked with them. We found that we could reduce the slip, trip, and fall by 1 to 2 falls. It was not hard to tell a customer, you got 5 stores. I'm asking you to reduce 1 fall a year. There's no one that's going to look at you and say, oh, I can't do that, Shari. Not just 1 a year. That's what I'm looking for. It was an easy sell point, and we'll come back and we'll take more readings on it. Here's what we found that was good and bad. This is a Shariism now. If we stayed on it, then life was good. If we didn't stay on it, we started them going back into the same pattern. So now you start to say to me, how are you going to prevent that? That adds more meaning to span of control of your facilities. That has more meaning to things like, let's really look at your maintenance and washing. I think I heard one of the prior speakers talking about grout. In this environment, I can tell you there's probably, if you said to me, what are the 2 things I need to do? I would have told them, I tell them all the time, I want no brown, no gray, and no black water. Sidebar, a lot of customers, they will use mops that are dirty and dirty head. I did a whole study on the mop and the twisting of the mop. And I don't know if you know this, but the twill in the mop is critical to picking up the contaminant, especially if you, depending on what you're using, an alkaline or an acidity base. And when it's frayed, it does not pick up. A lot of times people take bleach and they put bleach in the bucket before they put it in to kill the smell from the dirty mop. And I don't know if you know this, but a lot of products, bleach actually affects the products in a negative way. So I would say no bleach, clean mops, no brown, no black, no gray water. The other area that I found that was interesting was on the grout. Typically, when we would take the readings, I like to tell people when the walkway is always your x-axis, then you'll never forget. You can describe it to someone and say, they were walking in the north entrance, going toward this, and everybody knows that's the x-axis. Then perpendicular would be your y, and then the diagonal. I can tell you that we found the across the tile, the grout, was always the worst number. The catching up of particles and whatnot. So if you said to me in this environment, what would be another prevention? We were big in this environment with deck brushing because you're not going to remove that stuff. So in this case, we were able to come up with solutions. Now, how do you sustain it? Today, what happens is we built a landing page, a microsite for them, and we put many things on there, products that can be used, methods that can be used, easy posters, simple things about mop and showing them the mop and showing them the twill and why the twill is important. But easy things people can do to maintain their floors. So risk control, we're going to continue to use tribometry with our customers. In fact, we are going to take a deeper step in it. We're going to continue to use it as a red light, green light method. We have to pick, which standard are we going to use? We might use both. We want to be able to be successful with our footprints, with our customers, to say, here's what we see, here's where we think we can go, and here's how we can help you get there. So tribometry really does have a positive return. It does aid in slip, trips, and falls. Our customers are continuing to have savings and maintaining safe walkways. So tribometry and prevention of slip, trip, and falls has been a wonderful thing for us, and it's been very exciting. Before I open up for questions, I'll tell you another quick, cute story, because along the journey, I'm in my 60s, and when you get there, you pick up funny things that you think are funnier now than they were years ago. In the course of the study in this retail environment I was in, I had one owner-operator who was up in Long Island, and he had bird problems and the droppings from birds, and called me one day and said, this stuff is slipperier than you know what, Shari. And I thought, well, okay, So I had told one of my colleagues, I said, okay, I'm not going to Long Island, I'm going to be looking at bird droppings, because they're telling me that the whiter it is, the slipperier it is. And there is a woman in New Jersey who, her whole thing is on birds and bird protection for businesses. And I had a great educational. And I will tell you that a certain amount of ammonia on the flooring will break up the composite of the bird droppings, and the coefficient of friction does go down. So I felt quite accomplished that I had taken bird droppings and found how to reduce coefficient of friction on bird droppings. Probably I can add that to my resume at some point someday. But it was interesting. So everything has that slipperiness. So with that, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to open up for questions or thoughts. I don't know how to do this. The gentleman in the back, I'm not good at that.
You broke down your categories. How do you define real estate? That seems like a pretty broad.
Oh, good point. So in the world of real estate, in the world of insurance, we at CNA, and I think all carriers do this, you have your sweet spot or your appetite. So for example, we know that our real estate is commercial buildings. Today, we would describe certain commercial buildings that are certain heights and so much certain types of occupancies. And so we know going in that this is going to be the real estate slice we're going to take. So for us, we tend to like high-rise buildings. They're well protected. We tend to like certain occupancies where people are coming and going. We're not real fond of things like daycares in real estate. So I would say that's probably more of a business grouping that we go toward our occupancies. Now what we would do from a risk control viewpoint, we do this all the time, we help our underwriters by selecting appetites by bringing in the risk and exposure component. So if we had an environment that we felt had a lot of exposure, we would be talking to them up front. Grayson's here from our Atlanta office, Jeff is from Michigan, John and Lisa are part of the Atlanta team. They're talking to those underwriters all the time, and they're saying, this is an environment we want to go into, this is one we probably want to do it small, sparingly, because the exposure is so great until we get that under control. But let me go back to the construction. We know how to handle falls from heights. We're not afraid to go on roofs. We're not afraid to insure those people. We know the controls have to be in place. And Lisa and John are going to make sure those controls are in place through the risk assessment process. But if we know we can control the exposure, we will look to insure it. And then you do always assume some risk along the way. The gentleman in the back.
Obviously when you're doing COF readings, there's a lot of factors that can impact those readings. To see improvements, were you able to say or define whether it's the cleaning process or the chemistry that gives you the most significant impact?
Yeah, I would love to tell you yes, but my answer is no. Now, I'm going to preface that. Remember, our world is to improve and prevent injuries. Our world is to make the customer happy and free from injury. So can I say, as long as it's good and the customer is happy and they're not having injuries, we're happy? So I probably wouldn't normally dig there. The only way we would dig there is if we wanted to go into like real estate, we're going to have to do some things because of the terrazzo. As you know, terrazzo when it's dry is great, and when it's wet, not so good. So terrazzo is really popular in that industry. So we're going to have to dig a little bit, but the purpose of our digging would be so we can come up with controls and solutions. So I would probably have to tell you no. If you said to me in that study, what was the most impactful thing? Honestly, it would be deck brushing, and it would be no black, no gray, and no brown water. That doesn't really help you, and probably no ammonia thrown in. So that was kind of it. We kind of put a ban on ammonia in the retail stores, and it was very effective. Go ahead.
Hi, yeah, in your study, what was the average size or square footage of your retail stores?
Oh, good question. So that varied. I know what, I can't tell you that because I don't think we actually looked at the size. What I can tell you is we looked at areas that were impacted by slip and fall. And I can tell you that, interesting enough, the slipperiest area was where the customer was engaging with the insured. It was not the walkway, the doorway. And I think one would be because of mats. I think one would be because, I don't know why, but it was not the entranceway. It wasn't the bathrooms. It wasn't the bathrooms. Although I will tell you, I can pretty much tell you about this on the men's room, the size of the urinal. I can tell you the year of the building, and I can tell you how much residual is going to come off. I've also gotten very good at that. Let's joke about that. And it all has to do with the force, by the way, coming down on the urinal. Again, I'm a little geeky, but it works. True story, by the way, very true. They laugh about it in home office with the bird and the urinal with me. Go ahead.
We are a new client for CNA. And
Yes,
we are a real
thank
estate
you.
Client, and we have Class A office buildings coming
Yes.
online. And I see all of the incident reports come in.
Yes.
And my question is, with all of your statistics, I look at some of the videos from these slips and falls because we have a lot of cameras in our buildings, and you look and you say, there was nothing that caused them to slip and fall. So do any of your statistics sort of take out of all the slips and falls 10% for they really just tripped over their shoes versus this was caused by the floor, the chemicals, the cleaning? Because there's got to be a percentage that really is just...
Can I ask where you're located? Geographic. Okay, so I'm going to connect you afterward because we're going to look, oh, fantastic, thank you. Sorry, Grayson. So we're going to look to do some things in real estate, and we should talk. Where we're going is this week when I return, We are actually taking, and our claims department and our risk control department, they've been doing a pilot. We've taken our 3 locations that we have our top losses in the whole country, and these 2 groups have been doing a pilot. And what we're looking at, which I think you'll be fascinated with, is how can we start to blend these 2 units together at the claim state, at the identification of liability, at the investigation state, and at the risk prevention state. And there's several things we're going to do, and we're going to roll it out to the field. So don't know that yet, more to come. That's an area we do have to get into. Real estate I'm very interested in, and we're going to track that down. One thing I can offer you is we're about to release, we've taken every state in the country, and we have the, laws, contract laws for risk transfer, and we're going to give those as educational handouts so that, this is the law around vendors and supplies. This is the law about subcontractors. So we're going to give, we see risk transfer and contracts very close to slip, trip, and fall. So we have to kind of break some of that, and that'll help real estate quite a bit. So I think what you're going to see from us is risk transfer, contracts, slip, trips, and falls, real estate together. I think that's our next chapter. Go ahead, gentleman in the back. Hope I can answer your good question this time. I couldn't do it last time.
Coming back to your comment on eliminating the dirty water,
Yes.
basically. Do you accomplish that by just training people on the importance and changing out the water more frequently?
Yeah.
Or using a dual cavity mop bucket?
Good question. We love dual cavity mop buckets. We also brought the vendor in, who I think they're an NFSI customer or partner. I'm 99% sure. We met with them and said, can you make sure that the product that's coming in the door, how it's being used? And we did a simple pictorial on, actually they did the pictorial for us on, use this and this, clean the water, and the dual bucket. Yeah, we do like dual buckets. The other thing we do is like them, what type of floors are you going to be doing if you were a fast food store and you were doing the back end, the kitchen end? We don't want that water to be with the water in the front end of the store, right? Because the contaminants are very different, right? We don't like to mix contaminants because then that has to change your mechanism of your solutions. So it's a great business to be in. It's a hard business, but it's a fun business, slip and falls. Anything else? I'm sorry, there's a glare from the light, I couldn't see, but thanks for waving.
Okay, Dave, you had mentioned you noticed the difference when the mop heads become frayed and
Yes.
things. Did you do any study on different fabrics of mop heads, for instance, microfiber versus cotton?
Good thought. No, I did not, and I will tell you why. It was one of those, I think, the aha moments where I realized that mop had an impact, and I started to look at mops and that. So I did not. The mops that we saw, 99% were all the cotton mops, but good point. I don't know.
We're a big advocate for using microfiber.
I was just going to say, I'm thinking the microfiber might have done a better job. Yeah, I think so. But it was interesting. I never thought the twill would have, 4 twills is what you need. And I mean, who looks at twills, right? I did, but who would? Go ahead.
I was intrigued by the results in regards to the management and the amount of stores that were assigned to.
Yes, fascinating, wasn't it?
If I remember correctly, you mentioned that you had better results in the store manager that was over 5 versus 12 stores.
Yep.
My first assumption would have been, well, you know what, if this manager is doing a good job in one store, then he would make sure that all of his stores are consistent. My question is, would one of your conclusions or final thoughts would be that it was just the amount of workload that manager had that influenced the poor performance?
Yeah, so this is a Shariism, okay? Of the 300 some owner-operators we had at that point, 2, one in New Mexico and one in Illinois. I cannot tell you why, but they had span of control of 20 plus stores and they were like, no problem. But everyone else, we would tell people 5 to 7 stores, with a little wiggle room. We would prefer that we have some, have another person in charge of your floors. Right, so we would do that, yeah. Go ahead.
And I know this is 2 different lines of insurance, but out of all the slip and falls or slip, trip, and falls you've measured, have you been able to separate employees versus customers?
Yes.
2
different lines, and fortunately I handle both lines, so it makes it easy.
Okay. What did you find?
We haven't done a deep dive in the workers' comp space. We've done more with the liability space because of, from a business perspective, dollars, and we really like real estate is a sweet spot for us. We want real estate customers. We think we understand their business. So that's going to be important for that we really look at that risk and exposure. I would tell you in the comp, we did not, the numbers are kind of goofy. So in the construction site, the older workers, you could see more of a trend as it relates to the employees. I did not see that pattern in some of the other, we do manufacturing, for example. I did not see that pattern. I think the problem with manufacturing, and it may be more of us, the way we classify claims, we joke about, God forbid you hold a box and you fall. Because is it a manual material handling problem or is it a slip and fall, right? So I think there we're going to almost have to dig down into the claim notes deeper. So I'd like to tell you we did, but I did not look at that. Sorry.
Tell though, on the customer side, the real estate side, if there was more slip and falls coming into the building or exiting the building?
Don't know that act. That's the next journey. That's the next journey. I think you should watch CNA when it comes to real estate. You're going to see that's going to be big impact. I think real estate, financial institutions, manufacturing somewhat. Construction, we're doing something new in construction. We just kicked off this week. Can't tell you too much, but we'll just say it has to do with walking in dirt. Be very interesting.
Just tell them we have more coming in.
Do you really?
Coming into buildings and
Yeah,
leaving.
there you go.
And a lot around the elevators and trips coming into the elevator, out of the elevator.
And I think, just again, I'm going to make the comment of Shariism, this figure ground, that's an elevator issue. Spatial relationship, that's an elevator issue. And anything with the perception on the feet, changing the different types, that's an elevator issue. So I just think there's something there regarding distraction in eyes and feet. I do. Okay, one more, and I don't want to monopolize. Okay. Go ahead.
Just one. Seems like you and your team have mostly done studies on the insides of buildings. Do you do it outside also?
Oh yes, but so I'd like to say it was my team, but really it's the field that does the work. I did this one piece. In the retail that we looked in, that study that I shared with you, we did not have problems with as much with customers with parking lots. Now, when you think of food, fast food, anything that has a dual lane, anything that, when a customer says to you, when you say to the customer, one of the first questions I ask is, your business, how much is coming through the window versus indoors? And if the customer tells you 60 to 70%, which is a goal for a lot of fast food, then most of their stuff is not coming in the door, then that might have a piece of the impact because they're not walking through the door. If you take that compared to a retail store in a strip mall where they're doing packages, a mail room service, and there is no coming through, drive-through window, then it's automatically going to be probably more the parking lot and
the insurance impact is the entire property.
Probably the entire property. Well, yes and no. So for example, we do a lot of franchisees with parcel pickups and that. So we don't do the parking lots, we do the stores. So the joke of it is, I know the vendor, in fact, I know the insurance person, the risk control person who does the parking lots, and every year in December at renewal, I give them a call and I say, you take care of your parking lots and don't have your drivers fall on my parking lot, and I'll take care of them in the store and make sure they're safe.
So are you able to separate out?
You separate out, and that's because of coverage.
Coming in from the parking lot that gets inside, but whose problem is it really?
Yeah, but I would tell you we have more inside than we do parking lot problems. Parking lots we get fines by municipalities and tenants if they don't clean their parking lots.
What about raised like concrete squares that you see in a lot of courtyards, raised 12, 18-inch squares that you see in the courtyards of places, and they always get a little shifted and the plane on them is not quite right. I've noticed when you're around Emory here.
Yeah, I've seen more, and again, haven't studied, so this is Shariism. On the claims I looked at, I saw more where it was the concrete block for the bumper for the car, the tire stop. I saw more with we had more problems with rebar sticking up, and more problems with the edge of the concrete that's chiseled away. We've seen more problems there. We've had more probably, and if you said to me, outside, what's the biggest thing, I would tell you rebarb sticking up from that. That's probably the biggest thing I see as a problem. Okay. Well, thanks for letting me tell our story, and we appreciate it.
Don't go anywhere. Stay right there. Don't go anywhere, Shari. I have a question that is oftentimes, posed to us at the National Floor Safety Institute, knowing that we work with companies like CNA, large manufacturers, independent research organizations, et cetera. The question I got to ask, Shari, because I'm asked it all the time, is, number one, why is it that you chose to use the bot? Which, by the way, you said you've been doing this for 10 years, so that was long before there was a bot.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, the predecessor to the bot was the universal walkway
Yes,
test.
exactly.
Why did you select that device, number one? And secondly, why did you select to test static coefficient of friction, which again was not even an ANSI standard 10 years ago, but rather an NFSI standard? Why did you pick?
Okay, so the bot, the Tribometry, was kind of a easy business decision. We needed something here in the United States that would work versus overseas. We needed something where we could get output and that it was easy to use. So some of the great tribometers, like the James machine and some of them, they're great, but we're not in an environment. I need to, like I'll tell people, my working surface is in my trunk, and all of us are in our trunk, and we're just need a small instrument that we need to go out and do something with. I think originally the guidance that we got really came from the NFSI. It was pairing up with an organization that we could get some guidance from as far as understanding what can we use and what standard can we use. And again, for us, it's a walkway. Now, as we get more sophisticated, we are looking at other standards as far as the types of floors and some of the ASTMs and whatnot. But that's only because we're trying to take that next step to say, what is the composite of that tile? What does it look like? Is there a coefficient of friction? Can we know that up front when it's brand new? Because now we're helping the customer once they put it in. So probably, I'd like to tell you it was something really scientific, but it wasn't. It was probably getting good counsel and just saying, what will work for us that is easy, simple, quick? From a business viewpoint, we need equipment here. I can't be shipping equipment back to Germany. No disrespect to Germany, because the space of Germany and Switzerland is awesome. But that probably was the easiest. And the machine has been true to its word. I mean, it's helped us really establish a threshold, defend our position, and help customers do the right thing. So it just works.
Second and last question.
Okay. Hope I can answer.
I hope
Poor
you
gentleman
can,
back there, I'm so sorry.
I think everybody in this audience is probably thinking, whether they say it or not, but they will say it to me. Well, if I, as a property owner, retailer, restaurant, whatever business I'm in, if I am to elevate my floors into that high traction range, what you call the green zone, will CNA Insurance give me a discount on my premium?
They always say
Anybody
that.
ask that question to themselves today?
I'm really not going to. Can we not tape this piece? I can answer. So, you have to look at it from the insurance, right? I mean, we are there to assume risk. And as risk control professionals, that's what we do, and we get that. But at the same token, I can't dictate, I don't underwrite the business, or I can't dictate. What happens with insurance, like anything else, is when it's hard times, then there are credits to be had, right? But a lot of those are done and given away at the onset of making the deal, cutting the deal. I will tell you that we are, though, as an insurance carrier, not necessarily slip, trip, and fall today, but we are looking at other lines where we will give credits for having a good risk and exposure. You will get ultimately a better quote because you have a safer environment. So it does stand true. That's probably more to come as we keep working. Traditionally, what happens is we provide the risk and control. We do it enough that we can go to our underwriters to say, here are the controls, they're in place, this customer will perform better. And if the predictive analytics comes out that in fact they will perform better, well then it's easier for the underwriter to say, again assuming that line they can do that in, this customer is a safer customer. They are a better risk, and therefore they should reap the benefits from it. So I would say I'd like to tell you that we're there, and that's for any carrier, but I think that's the direction we're looking at. Safety is important. It's not just for CNA, it's for all the customers.
Well, it's kind of a sidebar to that, which is an ancillary question. Are you planning on using tribometry as a predictive model for predicting claims? In other words, you can go into a facility, take readings perhaps on the front end of the insuring process, and be able to say, hey, based on tribometry, we have a better understanding of how many claims this particular client may have, and use predictive analysis as a means by which to eventually affect claims.
Yeah. So I can't say that we can say that today. What I can say is we are going to, at CNA, in risk control, we're going to take about 50 risk control people. It's about 200. We are going to be using tribometry. I mean, I did purchase 18 more tribometers and got them all paid off. That we are going to start using tribometry to help customers understand this exposure. So I think today we're halfway there. Down the road, are we going to continue to take the results and to work with our actuaries on looking at customer outputs? Absolutely. But we would do that with any risk and exposure, right? I mean, that's our job. Our job is to look at, this is where your claims, how can we impact to make you safer? And how can we help you versus just saying, well, you had 2 frequency, 1 severity, here's your cost. What can we do that's different? So we do believe in tribometry. It's served us very well.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we break for lunch, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. I wanted to just add a few comments. Oftentimes, I get asked the question by people of all walks of life, particularly those that are in the standards development side of, where's your research? Where's your research, Russ? Who says that a certain coefficient of friction value means this? Or who says that your analysis or your numbers or your predictions are accurate? Where's your research? I hear that all the time. Where's your human ambulation studies? Where's your force plate studies? Where's your human factor studies? We can go on and on and on. And I'm oftentimes asked, do you do that? Do you have that? And the answer is no. No, we don't. And you know why? Because it doesn't matter. Our mission is preventing slips, trips, and falls, not studying the consequences of how people walk. Everybody walks differently. And we walk differently depending on our age, time of day, where we are, what environment we're in. It's kind of ridiculous to consider how people walk as being relevant to how people fall, or slip and fall, or trip and fall. What we did, the bold move we made in 2006 when we became an accredited ANSI standards developer, and let me tell you, that wasn't easy. What we did is we built tools for companies like CNA, for retailers, for grocers, for map manufacturers. And we can go on and on and on. Every industry that's touched by the problem now has a tool that they can predict, manage, but most importantly, prevent. That's our mission. That's what I'm about. That's why I'm here, and I assume that's why you're here. So when the question is asked, do you have any research? Well, it depends on what you mean by research. I think we heard a lot of information today, and by the way, this is, I think, the third, what may be a white paper, published by CNA. There's many, many more out there. We work with many insurance companies and third-party claims adjusters. And the impact of our work, the tools that we provide industry to take control, to manage and ultimately prevent these types of injuries is what we are about, creating those tools. And those tools are offered by way of, well, what began with tribometry, then extended itself into standards development, which has become an elevated area of importance for us. We are now, as I mentioned, an ANSI accredited, the only ANSI accredited organization in the world that can teach to this subject. We offer an accredited program called the Walkway Auditor Certificate Holder. You can become a professional, have a professional designation now in slip and fall prevention. That's never happened before, anywhere in the world. And so in a relatively short period of time, the National Floor Safety Institute, and it's not me. That's the other question I keep getting asked is, oh, it's just Russ. No, it's not just Russ. It's Shari and all the people in her company. It's Dr. Harris. It's Mark Edelman. It's Steve Spencer. We can go on and on and on. It is literally thousands of people who take our message and advance it for our mission of injury prevention. That's what makes us different. Not our research, but what comes of our work. Because at the end of the day, that next injury can be yours, or your mother's, or your wife's. And until it happens to you or somebody in your family, you generally don't care. As Mark or Dr. Fagiano said this morning, empathy is a tricky subject. You know, how is it you get people to care? And I'm not here to tell you. I don't know the answer to that. But I can tell you that by our caring, by the National Floor Safety Institute's impact on this subject has changed many people's lives. A gentleman by the name of, the American sniper, Chris Kyle, was asked the question, are you proud of how many people you killed, you assassinated, you shot as a sniper in Iraq? And he paused. He says, no. The only number I wish I knew is how many lives I saved. Amen. And God bless Chris Kyle. That's my answer to the same question. I don't know how many lives we've saved, how many injuries we've prevented, how many family members did not have to go through distress. What I do know is the path we're on works. It works. We're going to continue to do it. And I thank all those 4 speakers this morning. Before I let you go for lunch, we have a drawing. One of our sponsors, Rhea Footwear. Are you in the room? Okay, come on up here. Rhea Footwear has developed a very unique technology for outsoles. I don't know if you mind me saying this, but come on up. Paul's father was the manufacturer, and I guess developer, of a product called Shoes for Crews. Shoes for Crews makes a complete line, comprehensive line of slip-resistant footwear, primarily targeted towards the fast food industry. I know of Shoes for Crews because my experience in producing slip-resistant footwear for Traction Plus, we were competitors. And here we are on the same stage. Right? Kind of funny how that turns around. Paul's company has developed a very, very interesting technology in outsole materials, patterns, and the composition. And he's going to be giving away some shoes today. So we're going to go ahead and pick 4 names for this morning's session, and then additional 4 names at the end of the session who's going to get a complimentary pair of shoes. And by the way, the Rhea Footwear line doesn't look like Shoes for Crews. You'd actually be proud wearing them in public, not just on the job.
I'm wearing one.
So Paul's here again. He's one of our sponsors, and I'm going to go ahead and have you pick some cards out and read the names of the winners. Bob Kupras. You here? Okay.
So just shoot us an email, I think at the end of today.
Right.
Talk about emails and the size and the colors that you want, and we'll send it.
By the way, Bob, you get a size 6 whether you like it or not, so I hope they fit.
And Rose.
Yes.
Rose Roth.
Roth? Here? Okay. You may want to swap the pair size 6 with Bob.
Next is Lissa DeCaris.
Okay, and the last one?
Rob Anderson. There you go.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you.
Take care. Okay, everybody, we're out a little early, but that's probably good because, as I was told this morning, there's several other events on campus today, so it may get a little busy if you're going on campus for to eat. There is a cafeteria on campus. Number 2, this is finals week, so everybody's in, as I was told, finals mode. Not quite certain what that means. It's been a while since I've been in college. And so we may need a little bit extra time for the lunch break to return phone calls, etc. So we're going to start the afternoon session promptly at 1 o'clock, and so we'll see you all then. Thank you.